Yeah, I was MC for this 2 years, I believe. And then last year, you couldn't hear me, so I wasn't, because of my throat and what I'm dealing with the lymphoma. But this year, I think you can hear me. It's not perfect. I've got a paralyzed vocal cord, so that does impact. I've got a little different voice now. But anyway, a couple things I just wanted to say before Alex comes. And I just want to go back to where Max was. And I want to just think about that Peers test. In my world, I'm a controls engineer. And the most important device in a control system is the feedback device. And if you're walking down the road and you close your eyes, you're going to bump into something. Actually, I got a son that tried that skiing and he lost a tooth. So don't do that. But that's what Peers is. It's the feedback device. We have so many programs going on in churches and schools and everything. They have no idea what it's actually doing because there's no feedback device. And Peers is a feedback device. So I want to put that in your mind, the importance of that. It is the most critical thing. How do you get where you want to be if you have no feedback? And Peers is a fantastic feedback device. Question I have is, how many of you believe a person can be educated in wrong ideas? Is there anybody that doesn't think that besides me? And I say that because I want to bring the point that education is about teaching truth. I was an electrician before I went to engineering school. If I taught you to wire your house and I taught you wrong and it burned down, did I educate you? No, I confused you. So educating is about transferring true ideas. And we have learning and schooling. There's one that educates and one that confuses. And so don't raise your hands next time you hear that question. And then I also wanted to ask you, I'm going to speak tomorrow for like 20 minutes. But please read, I have a column I wrote recently called, Who is Your God? It's in the vouchers book, so grab that, and you can read it. If not, go to the website, CEI, and it's on there. But please read that before tomorrow when I speak for 20 minutes, because it will go much faster. I won't have to go over that, and you'll see where I'm going. It's talking about entitlements, okay? And what I say in that column applies beyond that particular focus. So, and I want to introduce Alex. He's already been up here, so I don't need to do much. And most of you know him, and he's fun to listen to. And I love to hear him, bring out his points and the way he does it. And from Florida, and Governor DeSantis was signing a bill for creating a gold currency in Florida, which passed, I believe, with unanimous vote, right? And I hear this voice asking a question. It was the second voice, and I said, I know that guy. It's Alex. And sure enough, it was. So anyway, welcome, Alex, to here. Thank you, Alex.
Hey, guys. Thank you again. It's a tremendous honor to be here. I appreciate so much the work you guys do. I'll start off by saying how embarrassed I am. I asked how long I had, and they said 45. I assumed that meant 45 hours, and they meant 45 minutes. So we're going to try to cram this into 12 hours now. But honestly, we're going to go way too fast. Thankfully, they're filming it, so if you need to, you can watch it in super slow-mo, which is what I recommend. But we'll start with an important lesson. How do you fold a UN flag? Right? You take it, and you fold it, and you fold it, and you fold it, and right into the trash can. Okay? That's where it belongs. Did you guys catch Donald Trump's speech at the United Abominations? Oh, man. He told them to their faces everything I've always wanted to do, too. And I get to ask it as a question for them when I go to their little conferences, but just telling them, there's something to that. So in Proverbs, we read in Proverbs 27 that the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Folks, we are facing massive danger, and even the best among us on our side don't yet realize it. So I'm going to talk about something that I've been talking about for a while. We already know this. You all know that the government schools are not educating anyone, and you don't have to take our word for it. The government will tell you less than 1/3 of the victims of our indoctrination camps are proficient in anything. Okay? And if you knew what they meant by proficiency, you'd realize that's even worse than it sounds. The vast majority of our young people are embracing socialism. They are leaving Christianity. They don't even like the label Christian anymore. Less than half of millennials today accept the label Christian, down from over 90% in the 1990s, okay? And it's always embarrassing to admit you're a millennial because people assume you're an idiot for good reason, Okay, so I want to start with this. The UN just dispatched one of its special rapporteurs to the United States, and they did an investigation of our country, in particular, the education system. Here's the final report. Surprise, we're in big trouble. Our country is not in full compliance with all of the international legal mechanisms that we're supposed to be obeying. The first and biggest problem is that the federal government doesn't yet completely run all of the brainwash camps. And they said this very openly, right? The loss of federal oversight, talking about the few little things that Trump has done, could deepen inequalities, harm marginalized students, and much more. Now, they acknowledge the 10th Amendment, that the powers not delegated to the U.S. government are reserved to the states or to the people, but they present it as an obstacle to be overcome, not a feature of the Constitution that we must protect. They say that children must be exposed to these filthy books. They actually call out my state of Florida, which is not doing what people think it is, right? They think they're protecting the kids from LGBT nonsense. No, they're not. It's still in all the schools. Sorry, hate to let you know. Same thing in Texas. But we're the problem because we're trying to protect kids from porn and obscenity. And they specifically call us out for being in violation of their little international human rights things. Book bans, they call it, right? Now, the only book that's actually banned is the Bible in these brainwash camps, if you know your history. Now, she called for government to control what is taught in every single educational setting and did it in very clear language. Private schools must submit. She says we need these standards that are outlined that the private sector providers must adhere to in accordance with the right to quality education. Okay. Very important. We're going to come back to this whole concept. They say children have a human right to education. We need to be prepared to respond to that. They cite the Abidjan Principles from one of their agreements on human rights obligations of states to provide public education, it says, to everyone. Okay? Got to limit the influence of private actors. This is all in the report. You can read it yourself. I've written several articles about it already. And they also demand that the U.S. government and state governments enshrine in their laws and constitutions the idea that education, their understanding of education, is a human right for all children. Okay. Now, before we even get into what the UN is up to, I want to share with you a little background. The first time I came across this idea of a human right to education, I was living in Sweden. Not on purpose. And Sweden is a great country. I have to say that because my wife is from there. And I lived there many years, and I love the Swedes. Not the new Swedes so much. They're kind of messing stuff up. But anyways, the government, the regime, was ruthlessly persecuting homeschoolers. They were ripping homeschooled children out of the arms of their families, including as these families were fleeing the country. Like they sent armed cops on airplanes to kidnap homeschooled children. And so I called the education minister. I was doing articles for at least a dozen publications trying to shine the light on these atrocities. This was 2011. And the only thing, the guy was like a parrot. Every child has a human right to education. I was like, yeah, but the children are getting educated at home. What do you mean? Oh, no, every child has a human right to education. It's like a parrot. They all have a right to education. And I didn't fully comprehend what that meant. I tried to get more details, but that was the takeaway. And I quoted him in a bunch of articles. Everyone has a human right to education. It wasn't until a few years later that I figured out what exactly that meant, and I'm going to share that with you today as time permits. But the UN's been very open about this agenda. At the UN World Conference on Education for All in Thailand in 1990, they said every child needs to learn from the same standards of learning. And they said that the basic learning needs and content required by every human being is not a responsibility of parents or the local school board or even the Supreme Court. It's a common and universal responsibility, which means it's a UN responsibility. Okay, that's what they mean with common and universal. We'll decide for you. So they've been telling us for 35 years that they intend to control what every child learns. 10 years later, they got together in Dakar in Senegal. They passed another international agreement on education. They said governments must implement integrated strategies which recognize the need for changes in attitudes, values, and practices. Notice, that's a must statement. And yes, your government signed on, along with every other national government in the world. If we could get sound on the videos, that'd be great. You might have heard Agenda 21 is a conspiracy theory.
We're included
CNN
in this
says.
mammoth Agenda 21 document.
Yeah, no, it's not a conspiracy theory, right? And the Uni Party loves it. Here's the former leader of the Communist Party in Congress.
The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. HCON Res 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21.
Yeah, so they're not playing, right? Now, if you don't know Agenda 21, this was adopted in 1992 by every national government in the world at the UN conference in Rio. And they summarize it nicely. They said it's an array of actions intended to be implemented by every person on Earth. Okay? No beating around the bush. They say it's going to require a profound reorientation of all human society unlike anything the world has ever experienced. Fancy that. Nobody voted on this, of course. And they know, Barack Obama famously called us the bitter clingers. Y'all are the bitter clingers. We're the bitter clingers. So what's their strategy? How are they going to overcome that? Well, they tell you if you read Agenda 21. They've got the whole plan laid out. It's in Chapter 36. We're going to brainwash your kids, okay? Education is critical for promoting this ideology from hell. It's indispensable, they said, for changing people's attitudes. It's critical, they said, for giving children the right ethical and awareness and values and attitudes and behaviors. And it's got to include spiritual development. And Americans say, yay, our kids are going to learn the 10 Commandments again. No, they're not. Okay, I'll show you what they mean by that before we wrap up today. I have the Agenda 21 book for children in my office. It's disgusting. It's abominable. This page always rubs me the wrong way. You've got these Hindu deities up on the clouds, and they're all mad because the storks are bringing babies. And then you find out why the Hindu deities are mad. On the adjacent page, it says, the earth groans every time it registers another birth. Yeah. I imagine the earth is groaning quite a bit. I got 6 and counting, praise the Lord. And little climate criminals, I guess I call them. One of them's in the back there. So this is crazy, folks. And there's actually a real simple formula here if you want to know what they're up to. Take everything God teaches, flip it exactly upside down. That's what the UN wants. So the first command God gave to mankind was what? Be fruitful and multiply. So the UN now teaches your children that the earth, Mother Earth, is groaning every time you have one of those CO2-emitting pesky things. Okay. Now, Agenda 2030, this was approved in 2015. The UN head of the General Assembly called it the Master Plan for Humanity, and I imagine God had a good chuckle about that. But they say your children are critical agents of change. Goal number 4, there's 17 of these, is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education for all. Notice there's no exemption there for your homeschool, for your Christian school. All of the little children will get a quality education as defined by our overlords at the UN. Now, you can read into goal number 4. They specifically tell you what they're going to have to learn. And they're not just going to be brainwashed to submit to this. The text actually says they're going to have to promote this ideology from hell. It's going to take some brainwashing. They say they got to learn about global citizenship, which is exactly what it sounds like. Right? They're going to be citizens of the New World Order, as so many of our political leaders like to call it. They got to learn gender equality, which in UN speak means let's smash the family, force the women into the workplace so that the government can educate all your kids. Okay? They're dead serious about this, folks. Read these documents. They give away the whole game plan. 2016, they came together again, this time in Korea. They got the Global Action Plan on Education, and they said that the education must promote the integrated development of the whole person, including their spirituality. We keep seeing this, right? Now, UNESCO, the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, is the lead agency tasked with carrying out this agenda. I made quite a few enemies there. Their director general loves slandering me in newspapers, and I love it because sometimes the newspapers will call me and say, hey, the director general says you're a fascist. Like, oh, really? Let me tell you what I really think. And so I've had some nice exchanges with newspaper editors over in Europe. She was a communist. She's retired now. They tried to make her secretary general, and that didn't work. But literally, a card-carrying member of the Bulgarian Communist Party served as foreign minister while they were slaughtering innocent people, persecuting Christians. Nice kind of people they put in charge here. And a few years ago, they created a new agency called UNESCO MGIP, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development. I was in India a few months ago, tried to talk to them. They're like, nope. Surprised they didn't want to talk to me. So I could spend a lot of time on this organization. This is the organization that UNESCO is using to mainstream what they call social emotional learning. How many have heard of social emotional learning? Good. The NEA says on its website, this is the heartbeat of what is happening in the classroom today. It is more important even than academics. It's their language, not mine. And so the UN agency was created by these 3. I mentioned Miss Irina Bokova, the communist mass-murdering regime functionary. Then you have former Soviet leader Rosa Utanbayeva of Kyrgyzstan. right? And then you have, last and not least, the late New Age occultist, Dr. Karan Singh. He was the Minister of Family Planning in India while they were rounding up millions of poor people and forcibly sterilizing them. Also the co-chair of an occult New Age operation connected to the UN called the World Commission on Global Consciousness and Spirituality. Now, I want to let these guys speak for themselves, right? Here's one of their experts talking about what SEL will do.
I come from UNESCO MGIP that is based in New Delhi, and we'll be talking to you today about socio-emotional learning and how we feel that this is the key to building global citizenship. My name is...
It's the key to building global citizenship. See, they're telling you that this is about the affective domain. We just want your children to be empathetic and compassionate. They have new, what they call competencies. You know, competencies used to be like the child can read, the child can understand the text, the child can do his multiplication tables. Now it's the child displays empathy. And so what they do is they'll present a situation like a girl needs to get an abortion, or there's a poor person on the wrong side of the border, or homosexuals love each other and they're not being allowed to get married by this mean old government. And then the child has to have the right attitude to prove that they have compassion. If you don't think the girl should murder the baby, if you don't think we should open up the border so that everybody can come across it, if you don't think that loving homosexuals ought to be quote-unquote married, you are not compassionate. And we're going to have to do an intervention. Now the computer does it for them, but this is where we're moving, folks. Now listen to this. This is right from their own propaganda video. We're going to change the mindsets, challenge the norms. This is right from UNESCO's webpage. Here's one of their advisors talking about what they're doing.
How about if I told you that within a generation, we could have a society that was more just, was more fair, and had better chances of peace? What if I told you that within 15 years, we could have an entire new generation of young people? They would think better than you or me. They would think equal. Now, what if I told you that we are creating this generation right now? So, how are we doing it? Simple. It's called education. Not just any type of education, but social and emotional intelligence.
He goes on, and it gets crazier and crazier. We just don't have time to go through it. But the main organization right now that's leading this charge is called CASTLE. It's the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, founded by and funded by Bill Gates of hell. Yes, that Bill Gates, Common Core fame, COVID expert, climate expert. I mean, the guy's just jack of all trades. And right on their website, there's some really interesting information. I did the first in-depth expose of this organization about 7 years ago in the Epic Times, and they said SEL competencies are going to be leveraged to develop justice-oriented global citizens. Like, it's them telling you, not me, okay? Now, one of the really interesting things, they took this down after I exposed it, but if you go to the History tab, and you can still find it in the archives, you'll find out that the whole idea for social-emotional learning, even the term itself, was born from a meeting at the Fetzer Institute. I didn't know what the Fetzer Institute was. Probably most of you don't either. So I looked it up. It's a New Age center of occultism founded by a disciple of Alice Bailey, the founder of the Lucifer Publishing Company. They do say, literally, right? They talk to their spirit buddies, they do spiritual invocations, and their whole objective is to inject spirituality back into education. It gets really weird here, so just bear with me. I know non-Christians look at this and they're like, what are you talking about? But I think we've read our Bibles, we know what's going on here. This is their leading luminary. Her name is Professor Linda Lantieri. She's a teacher at Teachers College, Columbia University, the most influential college of education in the world. Listen to what she says.
Courses like this are rooted in social and emotional learning, or SEL for short, a style of teaching that was pioneered by Linda Lantieri.
I did not imagine that I would be living to see some SEL in 92% of the nation's schools.
It's a lot more than that now, by the way, and there are a lot of Christian schools that have adopted Christian SEL programs, and they sprinkled some Bible verses on top, and they said it's Christian now. No, it's not, okay? But let's continue here.
I knew that if we didn't add the spiritual dimension to this work, we were going to leave kids with not all they needed to know. And the Fetzer Institute is really poised right now to step up in supporting this movement.
Fetzer understands that a basic science to establish the natural spirituality of the child presented a blueprint for building a new system of education. The people of Fetzer
are you guys
walk the
listening
walk.
to this? We're going to inject spirituality, and we're going to build a new system of education. Now, Last but not least on this lady, I'm going to share with you where she's getting her ideas from. She's got a good friend who visits her council table every night. Listen.
I'd like to offer some guiding agreements that hopefully we can all agree to in this next hour and a half that we're spending. And they come from one of my teachers who, by the way, showed up at my council table, always does. I hate to say she's passed to another dimension because I have regular communication with her.
She's talking to her interdimensional spirit buddies. Open up Leviticus, open up Deuteronomy. God literally puts this in the same sentence as sacrificing your children to demons. Okay? The penalty for this in ancient Israel was literally death. It's an abomination, says the Lord. Necromancy, talking to spirits. And they're not dead people, right? They're demons. So when I say they're teaching doctrines of demons to the children, I'm being 100% literal. Okay. It goes on and on and on. If we go all the way back to the foundation, I hope Lee will talk about this a little bit today. Robert and I have a lot on this in our upcoming book. The first guy to seriously propose that the government ought to be educating our children, Robert Owen, admitted just a few months before he died where he was getting his ideas from. He convened a conference in 1857, the Congress on the Advanced Minds of the World, and he admitted that his spirit friends were giving him these insights. He said he was communicating with them through Ouija boards and taps on walls, and this is back early 1800s, okay? And the same thread runs through this whole diabolical project. Right? Christian education is not just a nice preference, like I'd rather have chocolate ice cream than vanilla ice cream. It's absolutely essential. There's two systems, as Christ said, right? You're either with me or against me. And that is literal, and we need to understand that. So if you look at UNESCO, the first guy to lead it was this guy here, Julian Huxley. He was the head of the British Humanist Association, the head of the British Eugenics Society. And they're very active in this. They will tell you that they're working around the world to insert this madness everywhere. In 2018, they released the technical guidance on sex education. It will make you throw up. What they want to teach to 5-year-olds, I could not say in this room. I would be turned off the radio because the FCC would revoke somebody's license if I were to say that on the radio. That's how bad it is, and they want your 5-year-olds to know this. And yes, our government has been fully cooperating with these maniacs. Now, Donald Trump did announce that we're getting out. Praise the Lord for that. And the head of UNESCO, a socialist lady, promptly responded with a statement and said, "Oh, that's all right. We know you'll be back. And by the way, we're going to keep working with our American partners, state and local agencies, universities, nonprofit organizations." So it was a big kick rocks to Donald Trump. Here was the Secretary of Miseducation for 7 years under Barack Obama.
Hi, I'm Arnie Duncan, U.S. Secretary of Education, and we are so honored that the UN Secretary General has designated the United States as a champion country of the UN Global Education First Initiative.
Like, we're not just part of this, we are a champion country, okay? And it's coming at us like a freight train. So they also have the World Core Curriculum, developed by the father of global education, Robert Mueller, Assistant Secretary General of the United Abominations. He said this ought to be taught to every child in every school in every country on the planet. Interesting. He also admitted in the foreword of the teacher's manual that it's all based on the teachings of Alice Bailey, who we met earlier, the founder of the Lucifer Publishing Company, and, it goes on, the Tibetan teacher Javal Kul. Was not a Tibetan or a teacher or a human being. Alice Bailey claimed to be channeling her spirit buddy. She called it an ascended master. And this spirit buddy of hers was teaching her how we were going to get to this new age. Did a crazy book channeling this spiritual entity called Education in the New Age. I have it. I've read it multiple times. Some of it is incomprehensible. It's just ridiculous babbling. A lot of it will give you some strong clues into where we're going. We're laying the foundation for the emergence of a new species of human being. Okay? She says we're going to use education. Self-consciousness is going to be unfolded until the man recognizes his consciousness as a corporate part of a greater whole. And finally, world citizenship should be the goal of the enlightened, with a world federation and a world brain. We're going to use a synthesis of what the Marxists say and the neo-scholasticists, and we're going to get there using the chosen cooperative methods advocated by John Dewey, the founding father of this atrocity we call a government school system today. Soviet Union lover. I mean, go read his essays. Founder of the humanist religious movement, co-signer of the Humanist Manifesto that said, your little God is not real, you're God, I'm God. We can all know good and evil for ourselves. I hope this is starting to sound familiar, right? Genesis chapter 3, like literally the oldest lie in the book. So that's where they're going with this. And they fully intend to teach it to every child on earth. Here's the Secretary General of the UN in 2016.
Education must do more than produce individuals who can read, write, and count. It must nurture global citizens who can rise to the
Global citizens, all right? Now, Bill Gates of Hell went over to UNESCO headquarters in 2004, signed an agreement with them to create a global syllabus, global curriculum, global teacher training programs, global education standards, and technology systems to make it all work. And then he came back and he started pouring millions and then billions of dollars into what we all know today as Common Core. Okay? And they bought ads to tell you what this was going to do. Here you go. Oh, no. We must not have this video. Anyways, they say that under Common Core, children in Paris and Chicago and Seattle and Shanghai will all be learning from the same standards of learning. That's the ad that they bought to tell you how great this was going to be. Okay, and I'll send it to you later if you want. I'm sorry it's not working. Now, the mechanism to bring the rest of us in has already been tried and perfected. Yeah, I mentioned Sweden, the Kingdom of Sweden, and I can't say too many bad things about it because my wife will get mad. But a lot of organizations, including the UN, including big companies, test their products and their ideas in Sweden. It's like a test market. Small country, less than 10 million people. What happens in Sweden usually stays in Sweden because nobody outside of Sweden speaks Swedish for obvious reasons. So they use it as a testing ground. And I described a little bit of the horror that I saw. This is one of the children that the government stole for being homeschooled. There you see the before and after picture, before the government stole him and after. And I was watching this whole process. There he is, the last picture of him before the government kidnapped him on the airplane, sitting with his parents. They were trying to flee the country so they could continue homeschooling. And the government admitted they stole this child for homeschooling, by the way. Here's some of the other beautiful families I met who were in this battle. And by the way, it's not isolated to Sweden. France has just banned home education. Portugal is in the process. The UK is now writing such draconian rules, it will be shut down soon. The Pseudoscientific American has called for regulations at the federal level for American homeschoolers. And they end this with education is a basic human right. We've heard that term before, haven't we? Obviously, they call for regulation. That'll just be the camel's nose under the tent. Pretty soon, the whole stinking beast will be in there with you, spitting and destroying things. But this is happening now, folks. Minnesota just barely stopped a bill that all but would have destroyed home education. Okay. Connecticut, moving in that same direction. Illinois barely killed the Homeschool Act that would have made parents into criminals if they didn't fully cooperate with this atrocious new homeschool regime. It's happening everywhere. And it's exactly in line with what the UN wants. Now, this is why I always wait till the very last minute to send in my PowerPoints. They say, hey, Alex, we need your PowerPoint because we got to do the security test. So I didn't even have time to add this in. Just yesterday, UNESCO had a new report. I encourage you to read it. I had to write down some of the quotes because I didn't have time to get it in here before I sent it off. The report is called Homeschooling Through a Human Rights Lens. And I just want to read you a couple of statements from the summary. I'll try to read my own handwriting here. Considerations to guide policymakers in designing and monitoring homeschool-related laws and policies. As homeschooling continues to evolve, adopting a rights-based approach becomes crucial, balancing freedom of choice with the need for quality education through established minimum education standards and accountability. It's right from their report, just released. Okay. They said governments must implement oversight, including registration and evaluation of all homeschoolers. If you don't just go ahead and ban it outright. Why do we need to do those things? You know the answer now. Human rights. Children have a human right to a UN-approved education. And they say this openly. They've been saying it openly for years, just not this openly. The UN Human Rights Council, which is a total joke, literally mass murdering regimes with the blood of millions of people, sit on this joke. And they declared in 2015 that government must regulate all non-government education. Why? You have a human right to education. Okay. They said it openly, 2015. All the governments agreed. Now, UNESCO chief Irina Bokova, who I mentioned, the communist who really dislikes me, She's been saying this for a while, too. In a press release, she said that the UNESCO-led UN Decade of Education for Sustainable Development, which began in 2005, was explicitly intended to instill in every human being the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values necessary to shape a sustainable future. Like, they don't even hide it anymore, folks. They're putting out press releases bragging about what they're doing. She says we need a global movement with every student in every country learning about sustainable development from well-trained, equipped teachers with appropriate curricula and resources. Do you think they're going to carve out an exception for you and for your children? They will never do that. Okay? Here she is.
In 1990, the world met in Jomtien in Thailand. In 2000, it met in Dakar, Senegal, and adopted 6 Education for All goals. Today, the world meets in Incheon, Republic of Korea, to renew this vision and chart a new course that builds on education as a human right.
I'll remind you again, this lady was the foreign minister of a mass-murdering dictatorship that slaughtered 250,000 innocent people out of a population of 10 million. Do you think she really believes your children have human rights? Her dad was on the Politburo of the Bulgarian Communist Party. She was trained at the elite KGB diplomatic school in Moscow. Do you think she has the best interests of your children in mind? Well, of course not, right? We all know that. So they say your children has a human right to education. So let's go to the primary foundational human rights instrument of the United Nations. It's called the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Now, the whole thing is an atrocity. You should read it. It's a total inversion of what our founding fathers understood to be God-given, unalienable rights that come from God. God said, thou shalt not murder, so you have a right to life. God said government should punish evil. Murder is evil because God said so government must protect your right to life. Just basic biblical principles applied to government. That's what our founders believed. These people say education shall be compulsory. You have a right to compulsory education. You have a right, and if you don't agree, we'll point guns at you and throw you in a cage. Okay? That's how much we love you. And you read a little bit further down in Article 26, they said education shall further the activities of the United Nations. Like I said, I have 6 children so far. And guess what? We have never furthered the activities of the United Abominations in my homeschool. Never. And we never will. And so what does that mean from the perspective of these tyrants and the demons behind them? I probably don't have to connect the dots for you, right? I am depriving my poor little children of their human right to an education that furthers the activities of the United Nations. And what do you do with parents who deprive their children of human rights? Can you imagine? Like savages. Well, you have to protect those children, of course, and you have to punish those terrible parents. How could this be? And so what happened in Sweden will be coming here. I can't emphasize that strongly enough. It will be coming here. Now, there are some encouraging differences. We have 400 million guns. Okay? We also have a long tradition of saying no to tyrants. The Swedes don't have that. Okay? But this is coming, and it is coming now. Go read the report. Okay? We might have a reprieve for another 3.5 years, but even under the Republicans, this agenda is advancing. I wish I could tell you otherwise, but unfortunately, I got to tell you the truth. Here's a little bit on the differences between real human rights that God gave you and fake UN-approved human rights. Now, let's go back to the first Trump administration. And I like a lot of people working in the Trump administration. I know a lot of them. They're great, fine, wonderful, nice people. Betsy DeVos, the first Secretary of Education for Donald Trump, she went down to Argentina and signed a G20 education agreement where they said, we commit to facilitating the internationalization of education. This is the Trump administration. Okay? The agreement continues that we are going to promote the development of curricula with a strong focus on values, attitudes, and we're going to provide education that supports better integration of common values like sustainable development. This is the Trump administration, ladies and gentlemen. This was not Joe Biden or Barack Obama. So we're not out of the woods yet, okay? Here's where this all goes, all right? This is when she was Secretary of Education. She's speaking to young conservatives. Listen carefully to what she says.
So let's stop and rethink the definition of public education. Today, it's often defined as one type of school funded by taxpayers, controlled by government. But if every student is part of the public, then every way and every place a student learns is ultimately of benefit to the public. That should be the new definition of public education.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys, but my homeschool is not public education, and it never will be under any circumstances. Now, I wish I could tell you that this was Betsy DeVos's idea, but it's not. I have the UN documents proving this is the plan. In 2022, they released the Global Education Monitoring Report, and the challenge was, how do we bring non-state education providers under the government's control system? And there's a packet in the back, shekels and shackles. We've got an outline of this. But the answer is real simple. The UN says, give them all tax money, and then we'll force them to do what we say. And I could go through this whole report. It's about 84 pages. You can read it when you want. But it's crystal clear. They don't sugarcoat it. You're going to give them free government money like the cheese in the mousetrap, and then they're all going to have to do what we say. Parents, by the way, are stakeholders and vested interests to be overcome, they explain in this report. And, yeah, again, very clear. Very, very clear. Regulatory reforms are going to define what the public interest is in education and fix the rules under which private providers may participate. And yes, that's all of you. Homeschool parents, Christian schools, they will decide if you can participate because the state, they say, remains the duty bearer of education as a public good, which is exactly what they say in this new little report that they just released. The state is the duty bearer. So it is fascism, it is totalitarianism. They aim to wrap up the last little bastions of educational freedom because they're concerned. Just like that little boy who pointed out that the emperor had no clothes. They're worried about the little boy coming along and saying, wait a minute, guys, that guy is totally naked. Like Charlie Kirk. And everybody says, wait, what? Well, he really is naked. Can we say that? Right? They can't allow one of us to slip through the cracks. They don't want one single child, jungle Indian in the Amazon rainforest to slip through the cracks of this indoctrination system. And they are moving at breakneck speed to make it happen. So, conservatives used to understand this. I'm not going to have time to get into what's going on the school choice thing. I will point out that the school choice evangelist, Corey DeAngelis, funded by Betsy DeVos, here's his public page on the UNESCO website. Okay, they took it down now, but I got some nice screenshots. Why is Corey DeAngelis on UNESCO's website as a public expert? I'll be having a nice meeting with him in a few weeks in Texas. Pray for me. That'll be fun. Also turned out he was a homosexual porn star, but thankfully he has repented, so praise the Lord. Now, the government itself tells you that with the money comes control. 2016, the Government Accountability Office pointed out that all of the voucher programs have restrictions and regulations on them, of course. Okay, Arizona, Texas, it's all coming down the pike. And again, in the interest of time, we're going to just skip a lot of this. But they are already laying the groundwork to come after us. All the fake media is attacking homeschoolers as Nazis, as racists. One of the ladies leading the charge is at Harvard University. She's a law professor. No children, but I understand she has a lot of well-taken care of cats. But she leads the Child Advocacy Project. And so she's going to help protect your children from you. And she calls for a presumptive ban on homeschooling. She says a lot of really interesting things. She says some homeschoolers even question science. Can you believe it? It's terrible. What are we going to do? Okay. And so she calls for an end to homeschooling. Her sidekick here, law professor James Dwyer at William & Mary, he's even bolder. We just need to get rid of the idea of parents having rights at all.
The state needs to be the ultimate guarantor of a child's well-being. There's just no alternative to that. The reason parent-child relationships exist is because the state confers legal parenthood on people through its paternity and maternity laws. It's the state that is empowering parents to do anything with children, to take them home, to have custody, and to make any kind of decisions about that.
Man, Hegel would be smiling ear to ear, right? The state as God. The state is who makes you a dad. Right, Ruffy? The government made me your dad, okay? It's absolutely absurd, and anybody with common sense understands that, but they are dead serious, and they are working rapidly. We've got to get our kids out of this system. We need the churches to sound the alarm. We need to go back to what the scriptures teach on this, right? Here's my children's favorite Bible verse. Papa, you're provoking us to anger. That for dads, right? Bring up your children in the discipline, instruction, the fear, the admonition of the Lord. That's not negotiable. I don't co-parent with the government, as the nice ladies at Moms for Liberty say. Right? The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's the beginning of knowledge. It's actually part of the Great Commission. Right? It's not negotiable. We are making disciples, and our first and most important ministry is to the little children that God has placed in our home. Then from there, we can disciple the nations. We are in a spiritual battle, as you heard Charlie Kirk say, and we really need to do a fundamental rethink of education. I know I'm preaching to the choir in this room. I love the way CC says it. I'm blessed to be a fellow there. They say the purpose of education is to know God and make him known. My son is actually skipping CC, but don't tell Lee. He had co-op today. If you're not involved with Public School Exit yet, I would encourage you to at least work with us. We are doing the hard work right now with parents and with churches across this country to build a movement to get the children out. It is, I believe, one of the most essential tasks that we are facing. Yeah, we got to focus on the other stuff, the border, the abortion, the politics, yes, but we've got to rescue our children. I encourage you to check out the Freedom Project Academy. We've got some resources in the back, including in Spanish. We did some special issues of the New American Magazine completely dedicated to this. We went through 10 printings on this. We distributed hundreds of thousands of copies. We've got it in Spanish. I did a speaking tour in 2019. We've got 3 books on education so far. One will be out in January that I'm co-writing with Robert Borton's Woke and Weaponized. I encourage you to pick up a copy of that. Some of you have already received requests for endorsements. My Indoctrinating Our Children to Death came out last year, and then Crimes of the Educators. You can sign up for my free newsletter if you'd like updates on this and a lot of other stuff. We've got a sign-up sheet in the back, or you can just go online and do it. And I just want to end with this. Before I was homeschooling, when all this was going on in Sweden, my first son had just been born. He was a baby. We didn't know what we were going to do exactly. But this is what led me here. The government said, you can't homeschool. And the homeschool families, every single one of them in the entire kingdom of Sweden said, kick rocks. You're not having our kids. About half of them fled the country. This picture I actually took as we walked through downtown Stockholm carrying these banners. They loaded up on a ship and sailed for Åland in Finland. They said, we're not giving you our kids. They left their homes, their families, their friends, their jobs to continue homeschooling their children. And most of them weren't even Christian. Okay? If the homeschoolers in Sweden can do it, we can absolutely do it too. And I just want to end with Daniel chapter 3. Right? This needs to be our rallying cry. In Daniel chapter 3, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. King Nebuchadnezzar sets up this big golden idol and demands that everybody bow down and worship when the music plays. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the 3 Hebrew boys, say, no, we will not be worshiping your goofy little golden idol. Nebuchadnezzar got real mad. He says, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods nor worship the golden image which I have set up? And I love their response. We should memorize this if we haven't yet. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But even if he doesn't, right? Even if not, O king, you need to know, we will not serve your gods, and we will not bow to that golden image that you set up. Now, that's courage right there. Now, they knew God was going to protect them. We have no assurance that God is going to protect us. They may try to capture our children while we get on an airplane to go somewhere with less tyranny. So we need to just be clear about that. God protected them. He may not protect us. But what happened was amazing. They get thrown into the fire. The fire's like so hot. It's like 7 times hotter than usual. It even burns up the guys throwing them in. And then there's a 4th one in the fire. And then something amazing comes out. Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said, blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. And this is incredible. God uses the righteous defiance of these godly young men to bring the most powerful man in the world to his senses. He says, therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill. because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. So let that be our rallying cry, folks. By the time it's all said and done, every knee is going to bow, every tongue is going to confess. We just get to play a small little part in all that. Thank you, guys, and God bless you.